Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdog's Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, today we're going to be talking about various encounters with alien and cryptid beings, folks. I have two articles detailing several encounters with these entities. Both of them are truly fascinating accounts. Let's get into the first article. Indianapolis, Indiana, hostile gray giant triangle craft, and read exactly what was witnessed in this particular experiencer's story. In 2012, an Indianapolis experiencer reported a deeply disturbing nighttime encounter involving a hostile, extremely tall gray entity, an immense triangular craft, missing time, and severe physical disorientation. Upon waking, what makes this case especially compelling is the convergence of several recurring close encounter motives, including apparent phasing through solid matter, electrical disruption, behavioral trauma, and a distinctive odor that has surfaced in other anomalous encounter accounts. The witness also described a second overlapping event involving his then girlfriend, who claimed the same entity altered its appearance and deceived her by taking on his form. Taken together, the details suggest something more complex than a simple sighting, and they raise the same questions that have followed high strangeness reports for decades: intrusion, manipulation, and the possibility of intelligence operating outside accepted physical limits. Indeed, folks, this story does raise those troubling questions, so let's continue into it and see where this account goes. In 2012, I was living in Indianapolis, Indiana with my then girlfriend. One night, everything changed. I was in bed when I became aware of a very slender, very tall, and extremely hostile gray alien. There was nothing vague about the feeling it gave off. It radiated menace. Before I could make sense of what was happening, I was taken from my bed and dragged across the floor. Then somehow he passed straight through the wall and out into the backyard. Above the treetops hovered the largest craft I have ever seen. It was triangular, semi-translucent, and so massive that each of its 3 points extended beyond the horizon. At first, I remembered thinking that I was looking at part of the night sky itself. It was so enormous and so unnatural that my mind could barely process it as an object, but as I was pulled closer to the center of the yard, its edges began to show themselves, illuminated by an intensely bright, pulsating bluish-white light. At the center of the craft was a dull red light. It looked dim around the edges and brighter toward the middle, as if it were concentrating energy inward. I had the immediate sense that it was some kind of weapon. Then the bluish white light flashed like lightning. The next thing I remember is waking up face down on the lawn. My clothes were inside out and backward. My socks were completely gone and were never found. I felt seasick, weak, rubber-legged, and mentally fogged, like the confusion that comes after a concussion. I could barely gather myself. My girlfriend found me there, badly shaken and obviously traumatized after searching for me. When we went back into the house, it looked as if it had been ransacked. Both of our pit bulls had somehow been locked inside a spare bedroom, which made no sense at all. Then my girlfriend began telling me what had happened to her before I had described anything I had seen. She said the same entity had appeared to her and that it seemed capable of modifying reality. According to her, it made itself look like me. She believed she had sex with who she thought was me at some point during that encounter. She passed out. When she woke up the next morning, she was terrified, nude, and laying inside our walk-in closet with no memory of going in there. That was when she realized I was missing. Searched outside and found me in the backyard. All of the electronics in the house were fried. For about 2 weeks after that, it came back every night. During that entire period, I hardly spoke about any of it. I withdrew into myself. I was frightened, confused, and constantly on edge. The neighbors saw the craft and strange lights in the sky as well. They also commented on my girlfriend's odd behavior during that time. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it all stopped. I have lived with extreme fear ever since. Before this happened, I was a skeptic. Afterward, I could not remain one. That experience changed everything and is one of the reasons I eventually became a ufologist myself. One detail I almost never leave out is the smell. Both of us remembered it. It had a strange, moldy, cinnamon-like odor. For me, the closest comparison was the smell of gas at the dentist's office before sedation. It was distinctive, unnatural, and unforgettable. That is indeed interesting, folks. Could it be that maybe he wasn't abducted, but perhaps drugged? Maybe both him and his girlfriend are the victims of some sort of government conspiracy, maybe testing out some new kind of drug and hypnotic techniques. Or if you look at the fact that this man, seemingly when he woke up, his clothes were inside out, folks, as well as his girlfriend having possibly been, well, I guess, had sexual intercourse with an alien being, they bring up old legends of fairy lore, folks. Now, with old fairy lore, they say that if you want to avoid conflict with the good folk, the fairies, that you turn your clothes inside out. Now, this man, he woke up with his clothes inside out, and L didn't understand why. Presumably, he thinks that the aliens possibly put his clothes on backwards because they didn't understand human clothing, but maybe it has more to do with that old fairy legend, because maybe someone hundreds of years ago was abducted by aliens, and they put his clothes on backwards, and this led to him basically thinking that perhaps because his clothes were on backwards, they left him alone, or basically left him where he is. And this led to this old legend of turning your clothes backwards, inside out, to avoid contact with the good folk. Maybe this is all connected. Either way, a very bizarre story, folks, but it's only the first one. We have several more to read through. So now let's turn our attention to the next article titled Humanoid Horror, Pale Forest Beings, Glimmermen, and Tall Thin Night Visitors. Let's read this article that has both possible pale crawlers and glimmermen in it, folks. At least, maybe. Let's continue. For years, witnesses from very different locations have described humanoid entities that do not fit neatly into any single category in southern Maryland, near a wooded highway at dusk, in a backyard where something seemed to shimmer out of sight, and in a northern Michigan apartment complex where impossibly tall figures scattered into the dark. The details vary, but the unease remains the same. What makes these reports stand out is the consistency of the emotional reactions, shock, dread, and the lingering certainty that something profoundly abnormal was seen. Let's get into the actual account now. A reader wrote to me after hearing an account from a person she never expected to tell such a story. She explained that her stepfather, a stoic, highly intelligent, no-nonsense man, had recently shared an experience from years ago that had deeply unsettled her. He had never spoken of it before. According to the witness, he was driving home from work one evening in southern Maryland. It was around dusk, and he was traveling along a highway bordered by a dense forest not far from home. As he drove, he noticed two figures emerging from the woods. What struck him immediately was their height. He estimated that both were at least 8 feet tall. They were pale, slender, and unlike anything he had ever seen before. He said their bodies appeared almost skeletal, or like some kind of exposed exoskeleton. As he passed them, one of the beings turned and looked directly at the car. The witness had the distinct impression that it was staring straight into his eyes. That moment stayed with him. When he checked the rearview mirror, he saw both figures retreating quickly back into the forest. That is very intriguing, folks. It sounds like basically they could be tall gray aliens, perhaps, or maybe pale crawlers. But let's read on now. The account raises immediate questions. Were these some kind of unknown humanoids, a perceptual anomaly, or something even stranger? The witness did not embellish the story. He simply described what he saw, and for the person hearing it secondhand, that made it all the more chilling. Because it does sound, well, maybe it's feasible, folks. Either way, certainly frightening. And I can imagine why this person was certainly so fearful, folks, because it does sound like this could possibly happen. It's not too extraordinary, it's just real enough to be believable. Another witness described a very different but equally unnerving experience involving a figure that seemed unable to remain fully concealed. A few years earlier, her boyfriend had been working at a job site when he called late one night to tell her he had just seen something near a hedge. He said it looked like it was trying to cloak itself, but failing. The outline resembled a human form, yet it shimmered and glitched as though reality around it was unstable. He looked away for only a moment, and it was gone. That report might have remained a strange one-time incident, but additional details made it more disturbing. Around the same period, the witness herself began experiencing recurring dreams involving transparent or mirror-like beings. In the dreams, she was standing in the river near her home, surrounded by these entities. Each dream felt intensely real, almost like a lucid episode or out-of-body experience. The setting remained the same, as did the overwhelming sense of vulnerability and fear. The episodes became frequent enough that she began dreading sleep. What finally compelled her to share the story was that her boyfriend saw the same type of figure again years after the first sighting, and without any prompting from her. One night, he observed a strange translucent shape standing by the back hedge near the fence. He described a clear outline of where the figure stood, but its body seemed to waver and glimmer like the reflection of the hedge on the surface of moving water. Alarmed, he backed away slowly. When he glanced aside for a second, the figure was gone. He returned to the house, visibly shaken, and woke her, clearly frightened by what he had just witnessed. The timing disturbed her. She had not told him about the dreams, yet his renewed sighting closely echoed what she had been experiencing privately. The overlap between the visual encounters and the dream imagery added an extra layer of unease to the case, because it definitely seemed to corroborate what she was experiencing, folks, that there were these beings that were basically, well, I guess, abducting her or basically somehow influencing her and her dreams, folks. Maybe it was some sort of out-of-body experience. Maybe this all happened mentally. Or maybe she was being physically taken, folks, abducted by these beings. Be they ultra-terrestrial or alien or interdimensional, entities, folks. Either way, frightening is basically just the least I can say. And now we get to a third witness who recalled an event from roughly a decade earlier in northern Michigan. It was early summer, around 2 a.m. when her pug woke her to go outside. She lived in an apartment complex, and while waiting for the dog, she noticed what she assumed was a gathering across the way. A nearby apartment seemed to be hosting a party, though the sound was muffled, as if the windows were closed. She found it odd for a weeknight, but did not think much of it at first. Then she noticed a group of 5 figures standing in the parking lot. At a distance, something about them felt wrong. They were extremely tall, unnaturally thin, and so out of proportion that they immediately drew her attention. As she stared, the group seemed to realize they were being watched. 4 of them bolted into the darkness to the right. Another ran behind a building to the left, passing under a streetlight, where she could see it clearly. It was not only abnormally tall and skinny, but moved with startling speed and an awkward, unnatural gait. They sound basically like a cross between pell crawlers and gray aliens, if I have not said that before, folks, in this video. This is what I get here, folks. Were they wearing clothes? I would love to ask the witness if she knows that. But let's continue with her story now and finish off this article. Almost immediately afterwards, she heard what sounded like a wolf howl. Then came one of the strangest details of all. As the figures dispersed, folks, the party noise stopped. At once, the abrupt silence unnerved her as much as the beings themselves. She grabbed the dog, hurried back inside, and locked the door. Though she had experienced another paranormal events and had no problem discussing them, this encounter was different. Even years later, she still had no explanation for what she saw. And that this witness had seen so many things, folks, is telling. Sometimes these events seem to follow people around. Sometimes people who basically experience one bizarre event sometimes have others. Sometimes people basically see pell crawlers, aliens, Bigfoot, and then they will see ghosts, interdimensional interlopers, and even cryptids at random times as well, folks, as if their minds had been opened. Perhaps these witnesses had their minds opened, and this is why they were able to see these entities, folks. All I know for sure is that these things that people say they saw, to them it's as real as you or me, folks, and nothing can dissuade them from believing that. Could it be that maybe it was some sort of drug-induced hallucination, folks? I would imagine that skeptics will argue that some of these people are obviously on drugs, or maybe they're just mentally unwell, folks. That's what they will constantly go to. Now, a lot of people will say that is legitimately the most intelligent thing you can say, folks, that none of this is real. You can't just keep jumping to that conclusion, folks, or calling them all hoaxes, that these people just want money and attention, and this is what they want when so many people just want answers and don't want further publicity from these kinds of accounts. Though I won't say that all of the stories that we've read through since I've been doing this channel, folks, have been totally about people just experiencing random events. There are, and it is known that people will basically commit a hoax for money, folks, but in a lot of these cases, it doesn't feel that way, folks. And these accounts we read today, folks, with these possible alien abductions, encounters with gray aliens, pale crawlers, and even Glimmermen, folks, that maybe what is going on here is either a concentrated effort by beings, maybe studying this planet, maybe they're, and have always been on this planet, folks, maybe they're what we would call fairies and other things. Maybe there is some sort of breeding program. Remember in the first story, this woman said that basically what she thought was her boyfriend crawled into bed with her and she had sex with it, but now she thinks that it wasn't him at all because she found her boyfriend outside on the lawn with his clothes inside out and him unconscious. So, whatever it was, folks, is certainly something to consider, that maybe we're being visited by things from another dimension, or maybe close by, or closer than you think, folks, maybe under the earth, or maybe from beyond the stars. All I know for sure, folks, is that this is what I feel, and I think it's true. But folks, we're now at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics That Are Bad For You. You can use the YouTube link down below in the descriptions of the chat to go subscribe to me, and then hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure to hit the part of the bell that'll give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Until next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.